So those were great presentations. You guys kind of set me up beautifully. So I want to thank Patricia maybe for framing out some ways that we can think about emotions being inserted onto digital platforms. And then Reza thinking about what happens when we kind of turn the computer around to face itself and try to find meaning through that orientation. So this is an installation that I have up currently at the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts. It's part of the Bay Area now. And a little shout out to Miguel Novello. So he was a mastermind in helping me put this together. There are...
Until when can we see it?
It's up forever. I think until, I think through the end of March.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's 6 VR stations, some yoga mats, some comfy cushions, a silicone blanket that I made that's borrowing, a method used in the medical industry for suture test pads, so it mimics the density elasticity of skin. Inside of this kind of skin sculptural arrangement, there is a server. You can log onto the server, again for the first time, online. When you go onto the website, you get this welcome message asking you to kind of breathe in, center yourself, and then once you go into this website and enter, you can tap the screen or press your mouse, and you'll be transferring your mechanical, muscular energy into a digital signal, into electromagnetic signal that gets kind of magically transformed and put into the server. And then I have a Reiki healer that comes in and performs an energy healing on the server. I use motion capture data from that Reiki session, and then I have these hands that are animated that kind of follow that pattern. So when you go into VR, this is what you see. You have this kind of surrogate body, and then you can see the hands performing a Reiki session over your surrogate body. Here's a kind of, I love this photo, not very clear. It's just really pretty. I was thinking about, so part of my practice is using these metaphysical practices kind of coupled with real engineering. And by real engineering, I use that term kind of loosely. I worked as a mechanical engineer for artist Jim Campbell, again, self-taught, self-trained. I wasn't particularly good, but I was cheap. And so I frequently am using these engineering practices and coupling them with things that are kind of orthogonal, that don't necessarily go together well. So I don't know that I necessarily believe in Reiki. There's something about it that kind of doesn't ring true for me, yet when I don't get a cell signal, we're happy to kind of pass the cell phone back so the Wi-Fi signal is stronger here, right? And we kind of believe in that sort of energy blockage, but then somehow I don't know that I believe in energy blockages in the body, right? So can I hold these two things at once, and what happens when I put them together in an art piece? I was thinking a lot about the kind of infrastructure of digital technology, how it really needs to be kind of embodied, the way that it starts kind of mimicking veins or other types of musculature in the body, and how it's kind of at this architectural scale. And soon we see these server farms, they're not just architecture, right? They're kind of taking up spaces that are kind of bigger than architecture, that are start taking up city scales. But also thinking about, this was kind of the image that struck, kind of the inspirational image for this piece. So this is a photo taken in Puerto Rico after the hurricane. So thinking about the ways that our bodies rely on technology. I tell my students that we're already cyborgs, and they kind of look at me funny, and then I say, well, what happens if the power goes out, and really goes out and doesn't come back on? I don't think most of us in this room would fare too well, right? And so I think that our biological bodies are already dependent on technology in a really, in a non-superficial way. So thinking about what happens when we have natural disasters, how we kind of organize ourselves around technology. So that was one project, still up. I just closed another exhibition at Cloaca Projects, so I made a speculative cosmetic company. A lot of my projects involve kind of reimagining the biological body, coming up against digital forces, but also rubbing up against geologic forces, right? So we're now in the Anthropocene. That means that the biological body is having an impact on the geologic time scale. So that's another really hard thing for us to square. How do I as an individual impact the geologic time scale? So in this piece, rather than kind of imagining this through these kind of skins or digital skins, I'm asking users or viewers to kind of create, and made a speculative cosmetic company to create this kind of distributed performance. So we're literally rubbing geologic minerals on our skins. There's like the algae in here. There's some mushrooms. So in the copy on the website, I kind of rub into language that's a little bit weirder, right? And advertising copy is kind of weird anyway, right? Like it's kind of a bunch of non sequiturs coupled together, and we're kind of like, oh, that's fine, that's normal. So you're reading along this copy, and it's like asking you to breathe in deeply, think about your comrades, kind of performing this action, think about all of the bodies that have gone into this bottle, think about these underground networks of mycelium that facilitate communications in the forest. And then maybe you hit that kind of sentence, you're like, wait, why am I reading about mycelial networks in the forest? So it does actually, there is a website you can go on and you can buy these products, but it's also very much kind of a conceptual art piece. And again, can those two things exist at the same time? And I'm not sure that I've squared where this actually exists for me, but I think I'm okay with not knowing right now. So it will kind of live on the website, and I will continue to make these things as long as people keep buying them. My skins will be kind of distributed. So all of my projects, while they vary wildly in terms of material application, they all stem from these two visions I have of the future. The first is where and they're not necessarily compatible, I should mention that. So one is where our biology and technology are almost indistinguishable. I think this is an easy one to kind of imagine through science fiction or these kind of Hollywood imaginings. And then the other one is where the land can no longer support the techno-human agenda. That being said, there's also, this is kind of the triad that I think I return to when I think about my practice. Technology is always involved in some way, but it's mediating our perception and the body, or our body and the landscape. In certain cases, when I really hit on a great project, it's actually doing all three at the same time. So this is another installation. I think I'm not going to, I can talk about this. So in the front here, I have this mannequin. I don't have a better image of it, but I was doing a lot of work with the body and was on this mailing list from this mannequin warehouse kind of liquidator, next to my studio. And so I would get these kind of regular updates and like, oh, that's a crazy one. There's like a pug or something. Why a mannequin of a pug? But this one, I got an email from this kind of strange mannequin, and they said they had over 50 or something of these things, and they couldn't get rid of them, so they were giving them away. I was like, okay, I'll go check it out. And so then I walk into the store, and they had kind of had this mannequin pose in these kind of headstand positions. So I walk in, and it's this guy just kind of like laying out, and I'm just like, ugh, gross. Like, who would make this? And then it turns out the mannequins from the American Apparel bankruptcy liquidation sale. It's like, of course they would make that. American Apparel went bankrupt because of misogynistic behavior from the CEO. So of course, this kind of behavior is manifest in physical and material things. And over here on the left, he had a counterpart, a female mannequin. I wasn't sure that she was going to go in the exhibition, but I make models of my exhibitions, and I kind of imagine virtual worlds. I kept repositioning her in the virtual space. I'm like, I don't know, maybe she doesn't exist in here. And then in my physical studio, I had her, I had made a 3D scan of her to place in the model, and I had her covered with a blanket because I was doing some dusty work. And then I finished my work, and I turn around, and then the mannequin's covered in this blanket. It's like, oh, perfect, that's it. So she does exist, but she's maybe not physical. So I took the 3D scan, and then I tried to make a 3D scan of the blanket on top of her, but it wasn't really reading well. And so then I used just a plane in the virtual model, applied a cloth physics to it, and then allowed it to drape over her. So you have this kind of perfectly simulated cloth, and then this really messy scan. Similarly, in this piece on the, I also raised mosquitoes. I probably won't talk about that. Maybe if we have questions later. So on the left here, there is actually, if I play, let's see. Nope, won't take. See, are we online here?
You can be.
No, it's okay. So what this is a figure. It's a male model that I made a 3D scan of, and then used my motion capture data on him. So what ends up happening, let's see if we can get an image of, yeah, you can kind of see here. So the way that the motion capture program works, it actually stretches, it's kind of like joints, points to fit my dimensions. So the result is this, shell of him, but then kind of stretched into these female proportions. And then I danced in front of the scanner. It's a Connect, used for gameplay. Does anybody know what Connect? Connect, yeah. It's a product from Microsoft. They wanted to, it's intended for kind of embodied gameplay. So when you raise your arm, your character in the game raises their arm. It works through an infrared spray, and it can detect distance away from the sensor and then interpolate like a human body. But you can also take those scans, put them back together, and then make a 3D model. That's also how the same technology I used for my 3D scans. This is in the installation here. There's a room in the physical gallery. I recreate that in virtual space. And then I record the dance through this material here, which has like a frosted glass material applied to it. And then the whole thing's rear projected onto a glass. So the room's recreated in virtual space. I'm kind of recreating my motion on top of an actual, I guess an actual image, 3D image of the body. But all of these things are kind of, again, triangulated into some surrogate relationship using technology to kind of connect all these virtualized spaces and physical spaces. So that piece also was a part of the exhibition where it started with these kind of remakes. I was looking at these lifestyle magazines, like an image like this, I'm like, ooh, that's a nice plate, I want that plate, right? But then I'm realizing that I already have plates, or like, ooh, those are nice baskets, but I already have a basket, or maybe I need like shoes or a purse or a sweatshirt. So I just started scanning my own objects and then restaging them in these environments to kind of mimic these kind of Instagram feed lifestyle moments, right? And so like, what is it about this image? Why do I want this and maybe not that one, right? And so when you see the two side by side, it's really obvious the inadequacies of the rendered image, but when they start when they go back into their native space on Instagram or social media, which we're usually looking at on our phones, small screens, and not really paying attention to, they actually started passing. So, and I use these kind of hashtags like still life Sunday morning, or still life handmade ceramics, and then I get these comments, is that some sort of funny clay, or is that the glaze? And I wasn't intended trying to make fun of these things. I was just really interested in what happens when I like mimic it, like how close can I get? And some of them are more obvious, right? I really like this one in the context of like the egg challenge. All right, so thinking about what happens in screen space and what happens outside of screen space and what happens to our kind of biological bodies when we're really engaged in screen space. So I'm kind of interested in maybe over here, right? These things that can kill us while we're really hyper-focused in front of us. All right, so this is a point in the talk that I'm going to actually start reading a little bit, and it's short, I promise. Okay, so if VR can create a situation in which the user's entire environment is determined by the creators of the virtual world, then it is imperative that the creators of those virtual worlds take into account the collective needs of the physical one. Let's see here, I'm sorry. While this isn't a new sentiment, the election of 2017 revealed many people living in parallel but rarely overlapping realities. Today's screens mediate bodily experience of the physical world. In turn, we are beginning to see digital content shaping material reality. This is a flash crash caused by a tweet saying that, falsely claiming that the White House had been bombed. So collective memories form the basis of history, and people's understanding of history shapes how they think about the future. Technologies to deliver virtual and augmented reality will soon become as common as smartphones are today. Technologies to deliver hands-free mixed reality displays will also soon become as common as smartphones are today. And at the same time, the material environment and physical bodies living within it are approaching a critical moment of climate-induced destabilization that can only be mitigated by collective action. Good engineers can anticipate the ways a project could fail technically. On the other hand, artists are particularly, and art, philosophers, the humanities in general, are particularly good at asking questions addressing what if rather than how to. Questions like, what are all the ways this project could cause failures in other places if it is successful? Like any sustainable system, there's a feedback cycle in this graph, but it's kind of simplified to make the point, right? So engineering is really good at kind of direct actions, addressing particular problems. Art is dealing with kind of shifting people's emotional states, right? Hearts and minds. But in this kind of graph, right, we see emotions in the way that they shape our values, the way that values shape beliefs, the way that beliefs shape actions, and then those actions are kind of incorporated through institutions to make kind of physical change in the world. Right, so I submit that the best way to find our way back to reality is through the same platforms that undermine it. And I'm gonna just make another quick plug. I have a series of work that will be on exhibition on View, and a great show that kind of addresses how we think about ourselves in these technological systems, asking what it means to be seen, and what it means to be seen on various platforms. It's going to be at the Contemporary Jewish Museum, and this is one of the pieces going in it. That is my spiel.